Hey everyone, Daniel here from Twin Bytes with another tech tutorial for you. This time a video that is continuing a video series on my book Technology from back in 2009. But not to worry, the content on the video is going to be more up to date as well. So if you've been following me here and you find my videos helpful, please do give it a thumbs up, show your love, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and ring the bell to be notified every time we come out with a new video. Also note that even though the video is a lot newer than when the book came out, we do have more new information added to this video than what might be in the book. So it's not going to be identical if you look at the book, and if you would like to get a copy either of the physical book or of a PDF version of it, I will have a link in the description below. So we'll start off with talking about the cases or the box. Now it's also called a tower, and you can see in this picture here that it kind of looks like a tower, but you can get computers in all shapes and sizes, such as a desktop version of it or its small form factor. So this kind of looks a little bit more like a case or a box. It's definitely not a tower style. But there's other odd shapes, such as this one here, that is a little more boxy looking, and it can be used for video gaming console or some kind of a network attached storage device or a NAS server, different things like that that you can use as a maybe creating your own media center at home to store movies and videos on that you can attach to your television and play from there. So it's a lot more compact. You can also get some pretty fancy looking things if you want something that looks more Alienware type looking stuff that's from outer space. But these here are very plain looking simple versions. The motherboard is the first component that you're going to install into the case, and we're going to cover all the components here that you might install into your case and make it actually a bootable working computer. So the motherboard here is an Asus or Asus. Let me know how you might pronounce that. I've heard it two different ways, and even talking to employees at the company, depending who you talk to, they even pronounce it differently. Anyway, this is kind of the brains of the computer, so everything plugs into this. You'll see in the middle here we've got a spot for the CPU, so you got to make sure you get the right type that fits in here correctly. The memory, there's 4 slots for it to go in there. We've got a connection here for the power supply, as well as over here. We've got slots on this side over here that can be used for video cards, network cards, all kinds of different things that if they're not already built into the system, you can install cards there or just to expand them. The hard drives would be connected through SATA connections as well, which would be into these things down here, which are on the side, so you can't see from this view. All the components would plug in to the side, which when you're looking at the side of the case, you can see it from here. You've got the different sound audio ports. Wi-Fi is built in on this case, USBs, HDMI. There is no VGA or DVI connectors in this particular model because everything is kind of taken over by HDMI. The processor is what really drives the brains of the computer. Without this, it's just a dead brain, or you could almost say a brain-dead computer. So the brains are there, but nothing to drive it. This is what processes all the information that you do on the computer, and that's why it's called the central processing unit. When you're purchasing this, you got to make sure you get the correct one for your machine. In this picture, we're showing Intel. You could also have an AMD. Those are basically the 2 brands of processors you would install in a computer, whether it's an Apple or a Windows computer. But there are also the type that you get, you have to make sure it's correct. Even the generation, they've been a bit picky because in the last 9 years we're still seeing i3, i5, and i7, but they're just going through up to the 9th generation now as of the making of this video. Previously, when they came out, were single core to moving on to dual core, quad core, and they got into multi-threading and all kinds of options just to make it even more complicated to choose the correct processor. But we're not going to go into that level of detail on this video. We'll save that for our other videos when we can go into each component in a lot more detail to understand each component a little better. This is more of an overview, and now with the memory, this allows you to have many programs open at the same time depending on how much memory you have. It can really affect the speed of your computer, but you do have to get the supported memory. Not every computer can take the same amount of memory, and they don't take the same type, and they physically will not fit in the computer into the motherboard either if you don't get the right one. In this case, the one on the left is DDR4. It's a newer type memory, and on the left is DDR3, which is a little bit older, and they look pretty much the same, but if you notice on the left they have a lot more pins along the bottom slot of the computer, and also the slot, there's always a little slot connection on these that will make sure that you can't physically install the memory if it's not the right type. It just will not go in there because that slot doesn't line up with where the marker is on the computer, or I'm sorry, on the motherboard. If it doesn't match up with what the motherboard has, it will not allow you to install it. So that would be kind of a fail-safe to make sure you don't install the wrong type. The hard drive allows you to install all your programs from the operating system, the programs, and all your data, pictures, music, movies, and so on. We've got standard regular hard disk drives that have existed forever. And then on the right is the solid state drive, which is where everyone is starting to move to. And I know every computer I've owned for a while now, including every new computer that I sell to somebody, we're almost always putting a solid state drive because the prices have come down so much from when they first came out, but they are so much faster and make the biggest difference in speed, because the hard drive has always been the biggest bottleneck in any computer system. So at more than twice the price, you're getting a lot more than 3 times the speed. Depending on what you're doing, you may even notice 10 times the speed difference. The video cards, although not required in most machines now, they had the video adapter slot built into the motherboard. Like the previous motherboard we looked at had HDMI connections on it. But if you needed a VGA or a DVI, you would have to install a video card for that to work. Or also, if you wanted to have multiple screens on your computer, then you would have to install the other video cards that will expand the number of connections you can have. And the prices, they range so great that I had to show this one in particular, because I've heard so many times over the years when they find out how much it can cost to repair a computer, they say, I can get a new computer for that price. And I know darn well that you can't, because new computers really start from $700 up, and even to get something at $500 would be a refurbished unit usually, which is a half decent machine, but it's still not that great. So the components to a computer, you got to imagine how much each component costs if you're getting a computer for only $500. Guess how much this video card cost? This is almost a $5,000 video card. So when you want to think that you could get a new computer for the cost of a repair, it depends what is it you're repairing. If we're having to replace a $5,000 video card, it's going to cost another $5,000 to get a replacement video card, plus the technician's labor to do that. So the cost of the repairs is all relevant to the cost of the parts as well. Network cards are something else that are not required anymore because they're all built into the computer, whether it's a desktop or a laptop computer. But if you wanted to add additional network cards for some very special functionality that you required a second or third network port, then you could install a network card still today and expand that. CDs, DVDs, and Blu-ray. CDs are pretty much gone away now. DVDs can hold everything a CD does, a lot more than a CD. And it's actually cheaper to buy DVDs than it is CDs. Blu-rays are really with the movies. They can store even more than a DVD, but the price is still a little up there, and because the majority of what we're doing only requires a DVD, and especially with the internet and everything being online, you almost don't need a disc of any sort in the computer at all. The Blu-ray is pretty much saved for your television, but even then, with Netflix and all those things, we don't need Blu-ray anymore either. Now, going way back in time, I had this in the book, so we're talking 10 years, 11 years. Floppy disk drives, there was actually such thing as that. It would only hold 1.5 megabytes of data. Your pictures on your computer are that big or larger now, so you could barely fit one picture on one of those disks at this time, and it would take a really long time to just copy that one picture. The zip drives came out not long after that, allowing you to install, in this picture, 250 megabytes. They had various sizes. They were also internal in the computer, but this picture shows an external one. So if you did have something that you needed to read a drive from a long time ago, you could purchase still to this day an external zip drive. Now your computer, it generates heat, so it needs to be cooled properly. And there's various cooling devices you can install. The power supplies have their own fan, but you also got the CPU, which comes with a standard fan, or you can buy a little more higher grade fan, such as this one, that has copper going through it to conduct the heat better, and a bigger fan, and you can get fancy colored lights as well. And when you install the fans, whether it's a CPU fan or even a case fan in this picture, you got to install it the right way because the air flows in one direction. So you want to make sure that you install it in a way that the heat is being pulled away from the device that's generating the heat and blowing it out away from it, which usually is out of the case. So if you're installing it on a case as a case fan, you would want to install it in a way that the hot air is blowing out of the case. And for the CPU fan, you would want to also make sure that it's blowing the heat away from the CPU. The power supply, you can actually see on the top, the fan is showing there because it's got the fan built into the power supply unit. Now, these are to give power to the motherboard as well as to various components such as the hard drive or the DVD drive. Even a lot of the more powerful video cards require direct power from the power supply in order to run them because they also have fans. And you got to make sure you get the correct size power supply unit because they, on a standard tower, you can install one of those ATX ones on the left, but there are smaller form factor cases where you'd need to get some kind of a fancy, small, weird design shape power supply that may be difficult to find. Even if you're searching online, you'd have to do a special order for some of these things. So in summary, you've got your case that everything goes in. The motherboard sits on the bottom of the case, and then all the rest of the stuff piles on top of that. With the exception of the hard drive or DVD drive, they go into a bay in the front where you can access it. And the power supply, depending on the type of case you have, may go at the top or the bottom of the case. not really on top of the motherboard. Otherwise, everything plugs in the board. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you guys found this helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell to be notified every time we come out with a new video. If you want to be able to see the next video in this series or start from the bottom, I've got links at the bottom here to watch our entire series or start from the beginning. Alright, that's it for this video, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Bye for now.